Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Christina Stidham, Digital Content Manager at the Women in Retail Leadership Circle, and today I'm joined by Miya Knights, Head of Industry Insight at Eagle Eye, a leading software-as-a-service technology company. Miya is also co-author of the book Omnichannel Retail: How to Build Winning Stores in a Digital World. Today we're going to discuss key findings from her book, her career journey, and much more. So Miya, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Christina. Great to speak with you.
Great. So I know you have an extensive background as an enterprise technology journalist, analyst, and a research director. Can you tell our audience a bit more about your career journey?
Yes, gladly. I've been looking at the intersection of retail and technology for just over 20 years now. Started out as a copywriter, so I didn't actually start my career ever being able to cut code or configure a server, which I actually think helps in the communication of some really complex concepts that retailers have to grapple with nowadays when looking to specify technology that both their staff and their customers are going to use. And slowly from there, from working as a copywriter for a number of large enterprise tech firms, Unisys will date me, I ended up working as an enterprise technology journalist for a number of UK publications, trade tech publications, computing, and then went on to edit and own Retail Technology magazine. I bought that about 10 years ago. And then from there, I went into analysis. I always joke that people will pay me more for my opinion after so many years than they do for my editorial impartiality. So that's where I became an analyst at IDC and went on to look at retail technology more closely through Planet Retail, which is now known as Edge. And from there, brought you up to date with where I am at Eagle Eye, which is kind of the first time I'm doing all of the things I've done throughout my career for an actual technology firm.
Great. Yeah, you have a ton of experience. That's super interesting. So now let's discuss your book, Omnichannel Retail. Why did you and your co-author, Tim Mason, who I know is CEO of Eagle Eye, why did you decide to write the book? And could you share a few key highlights that our listeners might be interested in learning about?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it was the book that brought me to Eagle Eye. I should say Tim Mason, our CEO, as you rightly say, was CMO of Tesco's, one of the world's largest retailers and one of the UK's biggest grocers, in 1995 when its very successful and still going strong loyalty scheme Clubcard was launched. He then went on to become deputy CEO of that company, and since leaving and joining Eagle Eye, the connections that he's built up through that time in terms of, knowing customers through his experience with loyalty, running big retail and bringing that experience to bear at Eagle Eye, which develops digital marketing software for a number of retailers. He really wanted to tell the story about what he'd learned in terms of what retailers need to do to win customers in today's digital world in a book form. And I'd just written a book about Amazon, which also came out at the beginning of 2019. Tim's book came out April 2019, and we got to work. He had a really good idea about how to build winning stores in a digital world. We worked with the publishers and came up with the title of Omnichannel Retail, which is a kind of a love it or loathe it title, and by design it's meant to provoke debate in terms of what it means to engage consistently with the customer, and having the seeds of the book there already in his own mind from his own experience. We worked with the publisher to co-write the book together. As I said, it was successfully published in April, and hopefully just by telling you a little bit about the genesis of the title and the background behind it, I've been able to give you some of the highlights of the book, but I don't know if there's anything in that you want to sort of explore a bit further.
Yeah, I would love to know maybe, how you broke it down via chapter in the book. What are some of those really key golden nuggets that retailers should know?
Absolutely. I mean, we start off by sort of looking at retail today, the common terms bandied around about retail apocalypse on our high streets and our main streets, with Amazon being the gorilla in the room, e-commerce being an unknown quantity in terms of growth, in terms of where it's going to top out and how it's in fact impacting and influencing consumer choices and decisions. And we then we go back to basics, and I always say retail hasn't really changed. People will always need to buy stuff. It's just the ways and means enabled by technology that has changed their shopping habits. And this is where my technology expertise came in to kind of fill in the gaps in terms of consumer demand of full technology and the way it's impacting the shopping journey. So we go back to basics, and we talk about those analog learnings from the early days of mass loyalty schemes like Clubcard. And we say that engaging with customers directly, connecting with customers, knowing not only what they buy, but who they are, so that you can infer from that more about why they buy from you. It makes sense. I mean, loyalty might seem like an outdated term, but when you think about it, wanting to be someone's go-to grocer or fashion store is still a worthy exploit, and it's absolutely necessary nowadays in the cutthroat competitive landscape I've already outlined. So, having looked at the analog learnings and sort of broken down direct to consumer marketing schemes and loyalty schemes and how they worked then, we kind of try and bring that up to date now and say that actually the opportunity is there for retailers to connect with consumers, know what they buy, and link that to who they are in order to know a bit more about them, because of the digital revolution that we've seen over the last 20 years and the impact, as I've said, it's having on retailers that are both struggling and thriving depending on how they choose to use these new tools. And then we focus specifically on the store, because I think a lot of retailers have had a lot of success growing a new online business, but I think many will agree that that business has grown in isolation and is very much in silo to their traditional brick-and-mortar estates. And this is what brings us to the title sort of omni-channel, which really means customers don't see channels. They're channel blind. They only see one channel that represents the entire brand. And it's engaging with customers consistently, both online and in store, using these digital tools that will differentiate the winners from the losers in future. So finally, we start to draw some conclusions and give people some practical advice, and we talk about the stores being actually right now, on the whole, a black hole of digital information, one where Google can navigate you to the nearest store selling the nearest product you've just searched for, but when you get to the store door, you tend to put your mobile phone away. There's an opportunity there for retailers, particularly ones that already have an omni-channel presence, to extend, enhance that omni-channel presence into the store, and therefore enhance the customer journey, enhance levels of customer experience and service and speed, through navigation, inspiration at the shelf edge, through signage, through any digital touch point they choose to deploy in store. But essentially they need to give their stores a mobile makeover and digitally augment them using these tools to make digital in store something that consumers want to interact with. By doing that, you're connecting with them at all points along the shopping journey, not just seeing your customers in silo, both offline and then online. Your best customers are those that shop with you across all those channels, so why not be able to identify them in store? When we talk to customers say they want to be recognised, they want to be rewarded for their custom. If you give them that opportunity and add utility and speed and convenience into the package through an app potentially, you can start to target customers much more accurately, much more consistently, sending them vouchers that they can use offline and online, sending them vouchers that they can use within a few miles or a few minutes of a visit to a store, ordering ahead. All of these things that we're trying to inspire retailers to take on board into their stores, we outline in the later chapters of the book. And then we finally close by talking about content and saying that all that content that retailers have created for this online presence, they need to leverage in the store. So they need to give their stores a mobile makeover, digitally augment the customer experience, and make sure that their physical presence has a place in the digital world that consumers now inhabit.
That's fantastic. That is so much valuable and great insights and knowledge for retailers. It's so important today because, as you said, today's shoppers have such high expectations. They don't really see the channels. They just see the brick and mortar stores, how they can fit into the omni-channel experience. And that's really important for retailers to be able to connect everything and deliver one experience to shoppers. And I think you kind of answered my next question a little bit there. I was going to ask about the words digitally augmented store that you use in your book, about connecting the digital customer to the physical customer. Can you talk any more about how the retailers can better deliver this seamless and digital experience to their customers? I know you already touched on a few different ways that they can bring the digital technologies in store, but could you talk a little bit more about that for retailers listening?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's our definite sort of pet subject at the moment, because I think it's just so relevant in terms of how retailers are going to engage with consumers for the next few decades as we look ahead to 2020. I think the store isn't going anywhere. Between 80 and 90% of all sales are still completed in a store, whether or not that's buying online and picking up in store, or picking the product up there and then and taking it to a till. And that figure is not going to radically change for a long time. I mean, online growth estimates put e-commerce sales at about sort of 34, maybe 40% growth by 2023, 2024. So retailers really need to pay a mind to giving their stores a mobile makeover. I think the foundation of that is digital communication technologies, wireless, 5G. 5G is going to be very, very important for that. And with those technology foundations, infrastructure foundations, they can then start to digitally augment it. And by that that refers to the way that they're engaging customers directly in the store. I mean, when you think about it, the loyalty card is something that you ask customers to get out at the end of their journey. Why not inform that decision to use loyalty throughout the journey by using the thing that they engage with most throughout their day, which is their mobile phone, when you think about how often we hold it and use it and look at it. I think taking it down to some practical levels. When you've got Wi-Fi, you need a compelling reason to engage. I think if you have that online, you need to expose that in store through content at digital touch points. You need to be able to enhance that journey through the ability to understand who is in your store just by engaging via Wi-Fi, for example. But if you can get them to engage and identify themselves through an app or through registration that they already have with you online, for example, you can start to make some really relevant, useful suggestions along the journey, give them chances to opt out at any time. But those that want to engage in that way will likely feel that their journey is enriched, and actually the online presence then starts to complement the store, and you can start to use online to drive footfall into stores, which is something retailers are really, really worried about at the moment, and equally how e-commerce sales are cannibalizing store sales. So I think starting with the customer, putting the customer at the center of everything, which is one of the things I learned from retailers should learn from Amazon. Tracking that customer, being able to understand that customer ID, both online and offline, at any point through the customer journey, whether that's they come in through Instagram, they visit your website, then they come in store, then they go home and order online, then they come back in and collect it. Any permutation, I think, really needs to have that traceability. For known customers, because they should be your best customers, and you want to be able to give your best customers more of what they want in order to attract more of those best customers. But even unknown customers, and that's the interesting area that I work with closely at Eagle Eye with Tim in terms of digital marketing and using a voucher, for example, to drive footfall. Doing it digitally it presents a massive opportunity for retailers to know their customers and serve them better.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Using all of these digital physical experience tactics to not only retain your customers, but acquire new ones, especially through marketing. I also wanted to know, based on your extensive research and your industry knowledge, and all of this that you've put into the book in this realm of digital physical experience, what do you think savvy retailers are looking to launch or invest in 2020 to stay ahead of the competition?
Well, I think that's part of that in itself is a challenge. The question, savvy retailers, who are we defining as savvy retailers? So we talk a lot about the winners and losers, and that there will always be winners and losers. The book looks at what common denominators define the winners. And I kind of talked about some of those foundational infrastructure capabilities that I think the laggards really need to look at if they haven't already got in place in their store infrastructure, and that's Wi-Fi. They need to be ready for 5G. They need to essentially make their stores more intelligent from a communications, two-way communication standpoint. They've become very good at automating communications between branch and head office, between store and head office, and maybe even warehouses. They now need to get better at extending that communications capability out to their customers. I don't need to mention sort of technology trends like the Internet of Things, which I think is really pushing more advanced capabilities like order ahead, which can really help drive that digital connection into the store that I talked about. But then when you look at the winners kind of have already done that. They already have a fully fledged online presence. They already have a really sticky mobile app. They already have really robust, public, secure Wi-Fi in store, and they put their offers out through the app. For example, we work with one of Canadian's largest grocers, Loblaw, and last year they worked with us to relaunch their loyalty scheme using a mobile app under the new brand PC Optimum that serves around 18 million customers. And through that app and the interaction and engagement that they have with that app, with their most loyal customers, they're able to deliver up to 100 million permutations of different customer offers that are tailored and relevant and personalised to them every single day. That we've worked with them to extend that into a partnership with Esso so that they can get their points when they pump their gas as well. I think, savvy retailers are looking to really very much connect up that digital online presence to the store through loyalty, through utility. We talk about Starbucks in the app, in the book, and that demonstrates a lot of the functionality and capabilities as a retailer that I've talked about there. They use the order ahead capability. They also use their app to introduce new products. So you can drive brand awareness, you can drive a marketing campaign, you can increase share of voice that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do with analog displays in store. I mean, when a traditional store marketeer is thinking about share of voice in store, it's terribly limited when it comes to their printed analog capability. So I would also seriously think about electronic shelf edge labeling that can enable two-way by two-way communication and serve up relevant information about the products in terms of provenance. When I talk about inspiration, I often use the example of Burberry that embeds RFID tags into its hangers so that when the customer picks the hanger up off of the display, this is in their flagship store in London, the digital displays surrounding them will change to display that outfit being walked down the catwalk by the model in the latest as part of the latest collection. There have been examples of department stores using beacons to communicate with customers through mannequins beacon-enabled mannequins showing the full range merchandise, enabling them to click there and then on their phone to buy it, or maybe call up an assistant, but definitely put it in their basket and then take it to the nearest checkout or have it delivered at home with that omni-channel sort of seamless element. And then looking ahead to the ones really leading the way. I think once you've got that solid omni-channel presence that's digitally enabled to connect with consumers consistently across all channels, that makes the store a digitally enhanced and augmented environment as well. You can start to play with things like augmented reality, where I think IKEA is one of the standout examples of success. I think partly that's because you've got to think about the use cases by sector in terms of choosing the right technology for your business. High touch, high value environments like fashion can really afford to try and amp up the augmentation of the store experience to really bring their merchandise to life through digital. Equally, environments like home improvement, where you can bring the furniture that you see in store to your home and place it in your room for sizing and colour and measurement and so on. These are all capabilities that I think advanced retailers that are really advanced down that omni-channel road should be thinking about. And another one little pet one of mine I'll throw in to finish off would be navigation. Grocery stores are always changing their layout. Stores are always changing their layout. Why not give me the option of creating a shopping list online, bringing it in with my mobile and allowing me to do some wayfinding to find the quickest route around my store. Now, I know there are isolated examples of retailers that have done that, but can we think of any retailers that have brought all of these brilliant digital developments to bear in the store? I can't think of one as yet, but there are many examples of winners out there that I think are going to lead the way by example in 2020 and beyond.
Wow, yeah, and those were all great examples. I didn't know about the Burberry RFID tracking. That's super interesting. So all of this has been super interesting information. Where can our listeners learn more about your book and then make a purchase if they're interested in buying your book?
Yes, absolutely. You can visit the Eagle Eye website and find out more about the book there. I've serialized the book as a blog. So if you want to get a little bit of a taster, and there's an opportunity to win the book from that source.
Oh, cool.
Obviously, you can buy it from Amazon. But the publisher is Kogan Page, so that would be KOGAN page.com. Certainly if your listeners are interested, we can certainly arrange a discount for them as well.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Here at World C, we love talking about leadership, mentorship, professional development, all of that great stuff. So I'm wondering if along your career you've had any really strong mentors who have supported you, sponsored you, helped you advance in your career along the way.
Yes, I've been incredibly lucky. I think rather than name mentors, I'll just sort of name when these mentors entered my life, and the nuggets of advice that they've given me that have carried me forward. I was very, very lucky to get to study at Oxford University, and that really helped me become a great communicator. And it was there that I learned the adage to write about what you know, and being a journalist really helped me in understanding the issues. I kind of, as I said, sat at the intersection of the end user and the vendor for a very, very long time, and felt that with my communication skills I was able to articulate each other's challenges and kind of get technology to speak the language of business and vice versa, which I still think is an enduring challenge for a lot of companies. And as we still hear so much about digital transformation, I think the experiences I've had have really stood me in good stead. And I would hope that by sort of getting people to think, particularly writers, to think about writing about what they know, would be good advice to bear in mind. If you told me 20 years ago I'd have written a couple of business management books, I wouldn't have believed you. Maybe novels, but
Right.
but when I actually sat down to write them, they were really quite easy to write because I wrote about what I knew. Moving from journalism into analysis, I had a strong mentor in my final years as editor of Retail Technology magazine, who basically said, business management writing and business technology management essentially boils down to not really knowing what it does, but knowing what it will do for your business. So I think what we talked about in your last question, and I kind of touched upon in terms of, knowing whether or not you have a high touch, high value, low value, high touch type environment, and picking and choosing the technologies to fit the need that you're trying to meet for the consumer, being clear on that need first is very, very important. And too often technology vendors get bogged down in what it does and aren't able to articulate to retailers what it's going to do for their business. And I think retailers really, being the great salesman of across all industries, across all sectors, they really want to be sold on the art of what's possible, and you need to kind of show that to them. I think potentially starting with the consumer again is a really good place to try and illustrate that. So that was a great learning. And then in terms of the last few years, the CEO of one of the research firms I worked for, who went on to suggest that I work with Eagle Eye on this book, was definitely a mentor, both from a professional standpoint and also being a female leader that I greatly admire. In the last few years, I think the focus on gender bias potentially, or gender lack of gender opportunity for women. I've certainly come across some very strong women, a couple of really strong women come to mind that have just shown me that, if you haven't, particularly with this digital opportunity we spent so much time talking about, if you have an idea and you can't find someone to go out and support it, then there are so many ways to go out and build it yourself nowadays. And I think that would be my last piece of advice from those two very strong female leaders who have been mentors to me in the last sort of 3 or 4 years of my career.
Awesome. Yeah, we love hearing about especially female mentors and women who are supporting other women and helping them advance. That's great. So my last question for you is, I know you've held a variety of leadership positions throughout your career. You're holding one now at Eagle Eye. Could you share any quick advice for any other women looking to move into a leadership role or advance in their career into leadership?
I'm still learning myself, so I wouldn't want to give out any career advice from the point of view of sounding like I know it all. I think I'm in my mid-40s, so I would hope that there's still some way to go in terms of career professional success for myself. And so in terms of taking my own advice that I would offer, the challenge I have at the moment is wanting to be seen as an achiever rather than a doer. I think women are very, very good at telling people what they do, but I think the world of business is tuned into what people achieve, and there is a fine but very important distinction between the two. And as a communicator, being able to express that, I'm very keenly aware of. I think and communication interaction in business is so important. So it's how you bring that to bear in not only face-to-face communication, but how you communicate remotely. Nowadays that I go out and I do interviews, speaking engagements, and comment on news items and so on, it's how you present yourself as well. So I think I'm only still just learning how having confidence in yourself, and the belief in yourself to really project yourself as both an achiever and a doer, or a doer and an achiever. That's the more important part. Is best, the best ways to do that, the best ways to project yourself in that way. But I think, communication is key. And so written communication and any kind of interpersonal interactions, plus as well, of course, that the infamous CV and covering letter, make sure that you're presenting yourself as an achiever and not doer. And if you can't get someone to believe in your idea or believe in you, go out there and prove it yourself. As I said, go out there and build it.
That's great. Excellent advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your industry, thought leadership, everything about technology. This is fantastic. So thank you so much, Miya, for joining me on this episode of Women in Retail Talks.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks so much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcast for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.